Hello, this is the Fight Back podcast, hosted by exercise scientist Georgia Very. Here you'll find a series of honest conversations about martial arts and mental health. My guests and I explore the statement that every martial artist has heard: martial arts saved me. How and why do combat sports save people? Listen to find out. Okay, before you get into today's episode, I have a super important favor to ask you. Please either click on this link and check out the more detailed video, or head straight to the GoFundMe page. We're looking to raise money to host an international conference for trauma-informed martial arts in order to create a code of practice, an international best practice standard, so that we can make trauma-informed martial arts accessible around the world. If you listen to this podcast, you already know that martial arts has the power to save lives. We're looking at doing that clinically and on a huge global scale. Okay, I'm talking about getting government funding in various countries, creating teacher training so that new people can become accredited as trauma-informed martial arts instructors, and making this a viable source of therapy for all the people who really need mental health support right now. And after COVID, now is the time to act. Okay, so check out the GoFundMe page or click the video to check out more information to find out what the money's going towards, and also to hear about the challenge that I'm going to be doing in order to motivate everyone to raise this money. And now I'll let you get to today's amazing episode. Right, everybody, welcome to the Fight Back podcast. I'm here with John Deidouss, and I'm pronouncing that right, yes?
Yeah.
Amazing. Everyone, John is a Muay Thai coach and a Ph.D. student focusing on the social issues around combat sports, particularly looking at people of color. So welcome to the show, John.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for the introduction.
Can you do a better introduction than I just did? What is your relationship to Muay Thai and combat sports?
So I guess it started when I was around 18. Mm-hmm. So if I'm thinking about when I started training, I wanted to quit smoking cigarettes. That was one reason. So that was a motivation. And the other was just moving to a new country, because I moved from Dubai to Canada. I emigrated with my family, and I guess had this culture shock, and I guess being new. So I kind of felt a little bit lonely. So I had more time on my hands, and I was like, okay, let me train a little bit more. Started training at just a regular weightlifting gym. And then it was getting boring. And then I also wanted to quit smoking, like I said. So when me and my family moved, I found an MMA gym next to our place. So I was like, well, let me join it. And yeah, I got hooked. I think it was the first class was a boxing class. And I couldn't skip rope for 5 minutes. I started seeing like red spots everywhere, and I had to stop. And I was like, wow, I'm 18 and I can't skip rope for 5 minutes. So that scared me basically. And I basically quit cold turkey and just started training a lot. That was kind of like my substitute for smoking. So it was as motivating for me to do that. So from there, I went on to university, and I started studying sociology and started incorporating what I do outside, so combat sports, into my research topic. And yeah.
So I've asked a lot of people why they think people say martial arts or Muay Thai, whatever it is, saved them. Saved you from lung cancer, obviously. Hopefully, touch wood. Why else do you think that is, that people are so drawn to combat sports as a way to, save them from things or escape from things?
Yeah, it's a good question. So that was like one of the main things I was looking at in my master's. Especially after I got a big concussion, and it lasted for a while. So initially my research project was on something completely different. And then I was wondering, I'm like, why do I keep fighting? Like, why am I so interested in this? And I wondered why everyone else does, despite like the possibility that they could sustain injury, especially if they're competing mainly. I was looking at like fighters. And so just exploring people's different, sorry, that's my cat opened the door.
Cute.
But yeah, just like trying to figure out why are people motivated. So I was not only interviewing like fighters, but I was interviewing fighters, but wondering why they compete. and so many different motivations came up. There was like so much, so I had to narrow it down. And the two main motivations I found that made people keep coming back to the sport um, was community, the sense of community they felt in combat sports, specifically the relationship they built like with their training partners after day in and day out. Not yeah, just training with them basically, and just I guess that type of physical, um, I guess activity. It's hard to explain. So some people talked about how they felt like they could show their weakness in the gym, especially for guys, and usually that doesn't come up, in other contexts, like a guy showing their weaknesses, it's kind of like frowned upon for guys. So they felt like the sense of like community bond with the other guys in the gym, they felt more, one of my participants said authentic. He feels more authentic in the gym, like he could show his true colors in a way. Um, so yeah, that was one main motivation. The other one was social pressure. So that was yeah, the two was community and social pressure. So you can see kind of how they kind of play together, right? Like you're part of this community, but at the same time, like you feel a little bit pressured in some aspects of it. Whether it's maybe subtle hints from coaches that, oh, like, do you want to go for a fight when you feel like you're not completely ready? But then one of my participants put a different spin on it. He was like, well, for me, I don't see it as pressure from people. It's more of motivation, I find. It really depends on who you talk to. But those are the two main motivations I found: community, the relationships you build, the emotional connections you make with people, um, but also that there's also that side where you sometimes feel a little bit pressured, right? Because you're part of community that you care about the people around you. So yeah.
Talk to me more about the social pressure. So is that it improves people's lives because they feel like it's the standard within their community to be, running and training and eating well and things like that? Is that what that means, or something else?
Oh, when I say social pressure, sorry, I guess I'll define that. So when I say social pressure, I just mean like, when you feel that pressure, just from like family and your training partners to keep going, keep fighting or keep training. So let's say you're tired, for example, and you've had like a long training, you had a bunch of hard training sessions, right? And you feel like, yeah, I need a break. Like, yourself, you need a break. But then your friends like, oh, like your training partners are like, oh, come on, let's train, let's train. And it's not like they're telling you, oh, don't listen to your body, but you might feel that pressure, like, okay, I should go to the gym. Like they're all doing it, I should do it too. Oh, they're all fighting. Let me keep fighting. What if I don't keep up my fight, so I don't keep fighting, maybe I'll lose that connection. So that type of pressure doesn't have to be a direct type of pressure. I don't think that my participants were talking about. They kind of meant it more of maybe a pressure they put on themselves after training for a long time.
And so that answers the question of why people keep training. How do you link that concept then to how people find it has such a profound effect on their lives and their health and things like that?
Yeah, so there's so many different things. So one was this idea of like transformation through the body. So just bodily improvements. So whether it's feeling healthier. So like for me, for example, I wanted to train and quit smoking cigarettes. So for other people, it was maybe just building more stamina. So they really felt like just that type of, I guess, challenge to change their mindset. They felt there was a lot between the body as well as the mind. So like, yeah, yes, getting stronger and all that stuff, but also the mental side of things. Some of my participants were talking about just how it would give them that, I guess, the skill to like push past certain things that they could apply then in other aspects of their life. So that was one of the other motivations.
Have you
This was more
experienced any
for,
of it yourself? Oh, sorry, go.
oh yeah, I was gonna say, so that's more for, because I kind of like in the research distinguished the two. So it was like why people initially started and then why people continue after, maybe dealing with some injuries and all that. So when people initially started, it was for that physical and also mental kind of, I guess you could say, evolution they felt. But what kept them going for some of them was getting that experience after a while, just like because they love the sport.
Yeah, this it's so hard to do qualitative research like that when everyone's going to have such a different spin on it. So did
Yeah.
you publish that work as part of the masters?
No, I didn't publish it. I was working on doing that, but then I went to my PhD and then I started like working on that. So yeah, I'm still navigating the PhD. It's a long road. So yeah.
Yeah, so what have you found so far? I know you're just sort of dipping your toes into it, but thinking about some of the experiences of people of color in combat sports, have you started looking into that and what have you found?
Yeah, so that it's not something I really investigated, but something that slightly came up in my master's, and that's what kind of why I'm building on my master's and focusing on that topic. So during my master's, it came up first in the interviews. So as I was talking to different people, lots of different fighters, I noticed so I asked questions on social class, gender, um, race, community. I asked a bunch of different questions, and a lot of the questions they engaged with. But when I asked how does race come into play, like as a motivation, do you think that, and like not almost most of the participants didn't really engage with the question.
Mm-hmm.
They were just like, oh yeah, I don't know. And it kind of struck me because I am an immigrant and I'm mixed race. So for me, I felt like it does matter in a lot of contexts. And so it kind of just stood out to me, maybe just because of my background.
Mm.
So anyway, I kind of just like brushed it off, kept doing my research and all that. And then I found a pattern towards the end where a lot of the participants that were white really emphasized this like family bond. But the people of color that I talked to, the fighters of color that I talked to, didn't really emphasize this family bond as a motivation for them. It was more like, I have a goal here. I want to go, fight, or I have this goal, and it wasn't very community oriented. And then I kind of sat back and I was like, why is that? Why do they feel like a disconnection? And then I kind of thought about myself. I'm like, how do I feel as a person of color, And I was like, well, I am exactly like how they say it. Like I was known as the person that came to the gym, did what I had to do, and then I left. I never really interacted with the people that much. But then I know I do that in a lot of contexts, not just combat sports. So it kind of struck me. I'm like, okay, maybe I should just investigate this more closely. So that's what I'm basically gonna do. But yeah, I haven't done the research past that, except trying to figure out like a good research question. So and
Mm.
trying to figure out like what's already happening in the sport with relation to race. And so yeah.
I'm really interested to see what your research finds, because I know that other researchers have looked at martial arts as a construct to break down gender. Like for
Mm,
example, women who would normally feel like they were, overpowered by men have the position of power oftentimes in gyms where they are the coaches or the black belts or whichever martial art it might be, and how that creates almost like an example in people's lives where they get to see that women could be in a higher power position. And I guess the trouble is then translating it outside, but it's also seeing situations where men really respect women, where men really look after their female training partners.
mm,
There's all these really great examples of that gender being broken down as a barrier,
yeah.
but it seems, I mean, it would be a big implication to draw from your inkling without doing the research, but it seems fascinating to me that the same thing doesn't happen for people of color. And I of course can't really comment because I'm white, but I've just never noticed it. And now as you're saying that, I'm thinking over in my head, like if I feel like my gym's quite inclusive. If I think about the prominent people in the community, that a lot of them are from overseas, are of color. We've got some Thais. I've got a Thai trainer, and then in jiu-jitsu, we've got a Brazilian trainer, and of course he has darker skin. But
Yeah.
I wonder too if that's a product of the city that I live in Australia is just so multicultural,
Mm.
whereas maybe it's different in the States, and I know less about that. But yeah, what else have you seen? What else has been your experience?
So like me right now, I'm in Canada. That's where I
Mm-hmm.
live. So when I did this research, it was basically Ontario and Quebec, and I was living in Montreal. So most of the participants were uh, in Montreal, and that's a very also multicultural city. It's very diverse.
Mhm.
Um, so that's why also it was interesting because there's a lot of in that in like I basically interviewed a bunch of people like I knew, like I knew I had a good relationship with them, most of them. So so that was another interesting factor, like doing research with people, but yeah, so that was interesting too. Like in the gym I went to, like there were people from different backgrounds too. Um, so I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what like I don't want to imply things. Um, so that's why it would be very interesting to see because I'm just like reflecting on my own experience, and that's going to be part of my research. Because the way I see the world is obviously going to influence how I do my research going like in general. So
Mhm.
what I see, that's why I focus on this topic, I guess. But look at my own experience, I do feel, I guess, like that. Like I told you in the beginning, when I moved to Canada as an immigrant, I had this culture shock. I felt lonely. So I wonder if that kind of in some way maybe keeps it going on some level when you're in a new culture or a specific type of culture. So yeah, it would be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, why do you think that is? Do you think it is that the culture just seems so different that it's hard to like empathize and relate to the way people are talking, and that the distances they hold and all these sort of sub things that are related to culture? Or do you think it is that there's not as much of a welcome that is coming? Do you think it's coming from the people within people of color, or do you think it's coming from the people that they're training with? And if it's like that, then how can white people be better training partners?
Yeah, that's that's a good question. And um, so yeah, I would. So I guess with relation to the research, I would have to see what comes out. But
Mhm.
from my experience, yeah, I guess there's probably a lot of things, but just me reflecting on it, I feel like I'm coming into a culture, and in Canada, it is like it's considered a multicultural country and culture.
Mhm.
But at the same time, my first experience coming into high school here was super shocking, and it seemed very segregated. I walked into the school. This is just my high school, and
Mhm.
I see all the white people hanging out together. I see all the Iranian people hanging out together, and like literally, it was just super. Just it seemed very separated, and I didn't know where I fit because I'm mixed. So I was like, I guess I have to go with people I look like. Like, who do I look like? I guess I look more like that group. I guess I'll go hang out with them. Um, so I find that also comes into play in a lot of gyms too, where I find like there's kind of these different groups. And for me, I notice from what I remember anyway, um, I feel like it still happens in gyms as well. And then if you see who's usually coaches, a lot of times in my experience, it's white people. So if there's a culture that if there's white people that are at the top and then they are controlling kind of the culture, well, then it's going to be probably more of a white culture, right? That trickles down and that other groups have to kind of maybe assimilate as opposed to them feeling included. They have to change the way they do things. And
Mhm.
after a while, for me anyway, so this, I don't want to imply for other groups, this is my experience,
Mhm.
right? So that's how I felt. I felt like I kind of had to maybe adjust the way I do things as opposed to um, I guess, yeah, being included in some way. Like I had, yeah. So that's basically how I felt. So instead of trying really hard to be included, and sometimes I would distance myself and just, do other things because at some point it's a lot of adjustments that I had to do. And I also talked about this with my wife too. She's an athletic therapist and she's white. So we had a lot of conversations about this, and this is one that came up. This idea of like she feels sometimes like I in certain conversations don't try hard enough maybe to like kind of talk or whatever. But then I said, I'm like, I think for me, I just have to always adjust and I always have to make the effort in certain interactions. And then after a while, I just don't have the energy to do that. And I think that is because, um, yeah, it's a different type of interaction that I have to kind of deal with. yeah, I'm sorry if I'm being a little bit vague here, but yeah.
Would you have an example? I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you have an example of like an adjustment you might have made in the past?
Um, an adjustment during a like conversation or whatever.
Yeah, or anything, any kind of a behavioral adjustment.
Um, yeah, that's a good question. So the adjustment is usually just me trying to engage more in the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever it is, I need to try to engage more. And I think part of the distance I feel is because lots of times maybe the topics being talked about is not something that I'm interested in.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but sometimes it's just I guess sometimes it's just the feeling you have, like the vibe you get. Do you know what I mean? When you have this, some people you meet, you just have a connection you're able to talk to. You can relate easily.
Mm-hmm.
Some people you need to make a little bit more of an effort. So for me, I feel I always have to make, not always, a lot of times anyway, I have to make more of an effort. So it adds up. And so yeah, it might be like, on in both. It also is probably also part of me as well. Like I need to figure out how to maybe open up, but it's not as easy maybe being in a new surrounding. So yeah.
How has that insight impacted the way that you conduct yourself as a Muay Thai coach?
Yeah. So I think I'm just more sensitive to a lot of the different roles people play, whether you're a woman or if you're a person of color, uh, or if you're a man. Like I just take a lot of things more into account. So I just try to be more sensitive to certain, well, to a lot of, I don't know, I just take in a lot of factors. I try my best to do that, to accommodate as many people as I can. Because I don't want to be a coach that just leaves out, even if it's one person in the gym that comes in. Um, I don't want to leave out anyone. So I want to make sure everyone feels like they're included. So that's how I felt after doing my master's research, especially like impacted me. Um, so yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, or if you want me to go deeper, you can tell me.
Yeah, we can go deeper
But
into that, I think. Keep going.
yeah, I I guess every day is like a new challenge. I get into the gym, I make sure I look around, see who's there, and I just try to. I guess I try to, if I see, I don't know. Are you so? Do you mean like how it affects me when I interact, I guess, with people of color then in the gym, or just in general, like the way I coach?
Let's talk about both. Let's talk about just in general first. So, what are some of the things that you notice people like? How is an example of how someone could be excluded? And then, how would you look to include them into the community?
Yeah, yeah, that's a good question. I guess how would they be excluded? I guess it's not more about being ex- excluded more than me as a coach making sure the way I approach certain people, I approach them, each of them differently. So I would approach, yeah, just I don't know how to explain how I approach people differently, but I would yeah, I guess I'll just, the tone of my voice, for example, is one example. The way I talk to certain people will be a little bit different. Not that I'll be more of like, can I swear on the podcast? On
Yes,
podcast?
yes, yes, yes.
Yeah. So it's not like I'm like an asshole to some people and not an asshole to other people or whatever. But for certain people, I'll just like change my tone, right, depending on their tone. For example, I'll just try to meet them where they're at. Or for example, if I'm talking too fast for certain people because they talk fast, I'm not gonna. If I'm a person that talks fast in general, I'm not gonna go someone and just talk to them like, yeah, you understand me, right? Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm gonna slow it down. Ask them where they're at. I know some people feel like they're in a new environment too. So some people that are more casual, people come to the gym or they seem more comfortable. I'll talk to them like whatever, joke around. But if I see someone coming in and just seem like, okay, this is my first time here or whatever, I'll I'll change the way, I'll be more welcoming as opposed to like joking around with them right off the bat. Because I don't know this person. Maybe they're gonna be like, "Oh, I don't know you. Don't joke around with me." Because I know me, I don't like that. I don't like someone I just meet to come around and then start joking around with me a lot, and all that stuff. But some people do like that. But I guess my own experience as an immigrant coming to a new country, for me, I don't like when some people interact with me as if I knew them for 10 years. So I keep that in mind, for example. So yeah, basically it's more of it's it's a circumstance by circumstance, like in each interaction, I kind of sense where people are at, and I try my best to listen and try my best to accommodate those issues they might have, or like some, if they have any troubles, in the class. So, and I'll motivate them also in different ways. Some people you need to maybe push them harder, like go harder, go faster. They like that. Some people you shouldn't be doing that too. So I take that into account as well for different people, as opposed to just having this like, this is the culture of the gym and this is how it's gonna go. It's like I have to take an individual approach as well in a way. So I
Yeah.
guess, yeah. Sorry if I went like, whoo, like a bunch of loops to get
No,
to the
I get
point.
it. I
Yeah.
get it. I think you use a lot of good examples to explain just that concept of meeting people where they're at, I think is quite different to someone who has decided like the way that I coach is amazing or the way that I am is amazing and I'm going to be blanket like that. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but from an inclusivity point of view, I can definitely see, and you can see in some gyms how the perception for someone might be, or everybody responds really well to this like really authoritative or really casual or whatever the type of demeanor is of the coach. Everyone responds well to that. I don't feel like I respond well to that, but I'm going to pretend to on the outside, but on the inside, I'm going to feel inauthentic and
Yeah.
therefore feel uncomfortable and not want to engage in the community and just come in and train and leave because you feel, like you said, like there's a disconnect. So I think
Yeah.
for all coaches to be thinking a little bit more like that is useful, to think, how can I even just change my pitch or change my speed or my coaching
Yeah,
style?
exactly.
Does this person need demonstration? Do they need words? Do they need, to see it on a person, see it on the bag or whatever it might be? But those little things that you can do, I'm sure, like you've said from your experience, would have made a big difference when you're, initially coming through and noticing
Yeah.
that you weren't connecting to the community.
Yeah, no, that's yeah, you you kind of summed it up very well. Yeah, I think it's like that nuance, like as you go in as a coach, to be attentive to like everyone and understanding their different needs, and not putting kind of like a blanket and being like, okay, this is what's happening, which is not always easy. But I think it's, as a coach, it's like, I don't know, because for me, I know I would at first bounce around different gyms, and then until I felt like I had a good connection with the coach that understood maybe where I was, you know, where I'm at, which means sometimes push me, but sometimes don't, let me just do my thing. Uh, and some places I've been, it's like one way or the other, as opposed to like, okay, today we're doing this, tomorrow we're doing this with you, John, because, so that's important. Yeah, like you said, like just taking it, um, yeah, they have like a nuanced perspective on how to deal with people, basically.
Is it the same thing when we talk about that example then? How do you make sure that you're meeting people where they're at when it comes to meeting people of color where they're at? Are there any additional needs?
So specifically for people of color,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, I guess it depends on the person.
Mm.
So I can't say for like everyone. Again, I could only, unless I do the, until I do the research, until I do the research, I can only talk for myself.
Mm.
Um, so something, so you said something particular, right,
Mm-hmm.
for that group.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just reflecting on what did I need as a fight, as someone training, and then someone as a, that started to fight as well,
Mm-hmm.
coming into a gym. I guess I just needed that's that space sometime, and also that the understanding that I'm a person that sometimes is not going to feel too good coming to the gym, or that, I'm having a bad day, or maybe I have other struggles as well, coming to the gym. So someone just that understands that I might have other stuff on my plate, other shit on my plate too, as opposed to like, this is it, this is all you're focusing on, just fighting. So I feel like for me, I've stuck with my coaches in Montreal because they seem to take into account the other roles I played and the other things I had to deal with. Um, so I don't know if that. So I guess, even whether you're a person of color or you're some, if you're a group that's considered a minority in any way, um, I think it's important in some way to acknowledge the role that they have, or maybe the struggles they have to go through, depending on what group they're part of. But I don't want to also kind of not identify it, but kind of make it all about the struggles for different groups, like people of color, like me, for example. Like, everyone has their struggles, right? But yeah, just being attentive to the different roles people play, I would say, like people of color. But specifically, I can't like, again, talk in general terms. For me, that was what it was.
Yeah, I think what it really boils down to me, sounds like just having a bit more empathy for everybody, right? But you can especially,
Yeah,
I think you
that's
can
that's a
find
good word to use.
empathy, you can find it a little bit more easily if you consider the day-to-day struggles that somebody of color, or who's just immigrating, or who, is gay and is like bullied, or whatever the issues that come with being a minority might be. They tend to be the kind of thing that weigh on you consistently throughout the day. That's what it seems like to me. Of course, I don't really know, so I
Yeah,
can't speak again. But if you then take that person and they come into the gym and they had a bad day, and say, for example, you were like, oh, come like hang out with us, we're chatting, and you were having a bad day. And so you were just like, I just really need space right now. And you speak your boundaries. I think the damaging thing then comes if the next day or the next session or whatever, when they're feeling better and they want to engage in the community, that you then hold them having boundaries against them. So you say like, oh, you didn't want to hang out with us yesterday, so
mm,
obviously you don't like us. Now we tried, type thing.
yeah, I see.
Like, well,
Yeah,
you could just let it go. Every day be a new day, and be really open to everyone in the gym, because on some days they might need the community and some days they might need space. And having empathy for the fact that we need both at different times, I think, is really important, especially in 2021.
yeah, I guess that's it. Like, I think maybe my coaches, as they were being more attentive to the different issues I was dealing with, maybe they didn't have in their mind, oh yeah, he's dealing with maybe what it feels like to be a person of color every time, and whatever struggles he has to deal with internally. But I guess just them maybe giving me that specific type of, I guess, focus, like a different type of focus every day, and approaching me a different way every day, um, helped me, I guess, like, well, motivated me more, because maybe they didn't do it directly, but indirectly they gave me that space, but also that empathy to that motivated me. So yeah, that's true. I guess, like, like you said, it is like, being a person of color, for me anyway, my experience when I was younger was a little bit more intense, as opposed to in in Canada, it's a little bit more subtle, and it's a little bit less intense. When I was growing up, it was more direct and more explicit racism.
Well,
But now it's more just, I guess, maybe me dealing with those experiences as a person of color, in a new environment, day in and day out, and me just noticing things, and having to kind of, I guess, wrap my head around it. And part of me figuring that out is me doing the research on other
mm,
people's experiences. But it's also part of, kind of this, yeah, just this, I guess for me, my experience was more like microaggressions and kind of neglect. So that's kind of my experience as a person of color as I go about the world. So all those little things, whether it's microaggressions or that disconnect I feel on a daily basis, it adds on to, I guess, like you said, coming to the gym and dealing with that day in and day out. So yeah, I would definitely say that feeling of disconnect and just microaggressions maybe throughout the day, in different, maybe not throughout the day every day, but throughout my week, for example, or whatever, that I find up maybe due to yeah, my background, but maybe not.
yeah, and you can totally imagine, well, I can imagine how that microaggressions and this, like, you don't belong here energy type of thing coming through
Yeah.
gyms totally opposes your ability to have those two things that you found were the reason why people would want to stay in martial arts, the community and the social pressure. You're not going to feel connected to a community who's throwing microaggressions at you. And
Yeah.
you're going to respond in a negative way to the social pressure. Like it's not going to feel the same, like the group want me to do this, but in a good way. It's going to be like the group are making me do this, but almost I can imagine it would feel like in a bad way that
Yeah.
dealing with that would really inhibit your ability to build those two things, which is why people stay, which might be why a lot of people end up not staying too. If we think about the other end of the thing, which I'm not sure if your research looked at, but like why do people quit? Why do people quit doing
Yeah.
martial arts? I mean,
That
it's
would be very
obvious.
interesting too.
Concussions and stuff seems like a rational person's reason to be like, yeah, maybe this is kind of dangerous and I should stop doing
Yeah.
it. But yeah, I've been concussed. I've had fights, and I've had black eyes, and it looks terrible. And at no
Yeah.
point are you like, this is probably a sign that I'm doing the wrong thing. You're just like, yeah, it's
Yeah.
worth it for that community. And I want to go back in the gym. And when you go back to the gym, everyone's going to be like, oh, bad luck. But when are you going to fight again?
Yeah,
So,
exactly. Like, what's up next? What's the next thing? Yeah,
yeah.
definitely. Yeah, but that's exactly it, what you said. It's hard to feel connected to a community if you, yeah, not maybe specifically microaggressions. That's one example for me, from my experience. But yeah, definitely. So it's interesting to see what will come out. Like for example, like I was doing a presentation, I'm kind of proposing what I plan to research at school, and looking just at, for example, like big organizations, like for example the UFC and
Mhm.
Conor McGregor, like he's seen use it. Well, he has used some like slurs and certain, I guess, what would you call it? Just indirect ways, referring to someone's skin color, their heritage, such as when he fought Nate Diaz, as well as Jose Aldo. So it's interesting to see like how certain comments are maybe brushed off as, no, it's nothing. When you're reading it, there's nothing specific, explicit about it. But if you look at the history of certain things, it's pretty intense. I'll just give you one quote if you would want to hear it.
I love it. Yes, please.
Awesome. Let me just pull it up real fast.
Mhm.
So this is one of Conor McGregor's quotes to to Jose Aldo at a press conference. So it says, I quote, "If this was a different time, I would invade his favela on horseback and kill anyone who is not fit to work." So we could see like this kind of colonial mindset. It's like, oh, like we're better, and if we were in a different time, you'd have a totally different position. You'd be in a different position, but because we're in a new time, like as if we're like in a post-racial type world, so we can't do that. So it has some type of connotations, right? Like other people hear it, and I wonder what they think, and the people that are maybe slightly, maybe they are trying to hold back in a way, like they encourage now, maybe in a way, spectators to maybe talk like that as well if they look up to Conor McGregor. So I wonder what that does to like other fans, perceptions um, of like in the sport too. So it's interesting to see like how that trickles down. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. You can see how like fans and stuff would want to emulate their role models in the sport. And I guess we're lucky that we've got some quite like modest, soft-spoken people, athletes in the sport. I'm like just kind of thinking through too to think if there are any like I'm kind of thinking of the people of color in the UFC, and they're all very respectful. If you think, even like Kamaru Usman
Yeah.
started trying to shit talk, and he's just really bad at it. He can't even do it. They're almost forcing. It seems like they're almost forcing him to do it because that's wanted of the sport. But
Yeah.
it doesn't seem like he's really doing very much of that. So it's very interesting to think about what the impact of different people saying different things would have in a community setting, you know, how far it trickles down all the way into gyms and how that affects people's experiences. So I'll be very interested to see how your research pans out. How long does a PhD go for over there?
Oh, it's my program is around, they said minimum 5 years. So I'm in my second year right now.
So you got 3 years to go. So 2024, we'll have you back on. We'll have you back on to reveal the results of your thesis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We'll see what happens with COVID too. Maybe they'll be like, yeah, it's interesting to see what happens in 2024 with relation to training and stuff. Are you all able to train now, like in Australia?
Yeah, so in Melbourne,
Yes.
we're allowed to train. Full contact
Damn.
training back. Yeah, but I broke my collarbone 6 weeks ago,
Ooh.
so I haven't been training. But
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
we're super lucky. We did have very strict lockdowns in the beginning, and you know that was very tough. But now it seems to be like we're getting the benefit of it, which is really good. But definitely, I think even just speaking to a lot of my friends and trying to keep together like an online version of the community that we had was really just not the same, you know, when you're not like seeing everybody and everyone gets so tired of talking on Messenger and on Zoom.
Yeah.
And, you know, you do your best, but I think people's mental health really suffered by not having the martial arts community to lean on and for support and joy and all these other things that we get from coming to training with other people.
Yeah, no, definitely. Even me, like I took a break when I moved, and because I moved for school for my research, and then also so I switched gyms. But at first, I was trying to I switched. Well, I left the gym, moved to a new province, and then try to find like a gym that fit well for me. Um, and and then yeah, so I took a break for a while, but I was really starting to miss, more like training again with other people, because I got a bag in the house. I was hitting the bag and all that. But I really miss just like sharing the passion, with other people. When you get someone next to you doing the same thing that's as interested in what you're doing, it's a different type of motivation. And I kind of forgot that, like, yes, for sure, like, talking to people and going to see your training partners is fun, but I took for granted basically the just having people around you doing the same thing, even if you're not talking to them, but you're just training, maybe someone else is hitting the bag next to you while you're doing your own thing. Just like having people there doing the same thing you're doing, that like doing it. Uh, for me, it motivated me. So I kind of took that for granted until I left. And then I realized, I was like, wow, like not just talking to people and not just like having that relationship with other fighters, um, but also just having people around you, doing the same thing and feeling that type of community without really always talking, but just understanding like, oh, we're all here doing the same thing kind of thing.
Yeah, it's like you're all in the trenches together, kind of a feeling.
Yeah, exactly. I kind of have the same feeling when I'm like working on my paper, and I'm at a cafe and then there's other people I see, like other students working on a paper. Uh, and then I moved now, I live in the country, so I don't really go to cafes anymore. So now I'm like, oh, I miss that. And what I miss is not going to a cafe, but just having other students there, just like kind of doing the same thing. We're all doing the same kind of struggle, I guess. So yeah.
Yeah, the human brain is amazing, really, isn't it? Like if somebody else is doing something, it's like we kind of want to do it more, or we want to do it harder, or it really motivates us. Whereas if we're doing it, we think we're doing it by ourselves, then it's easier to just be like, I kind of don't want to do it anymore. Of course, you can always motivate yourself and push through and be disciplined, but if you think about like the easiest way to do something is to get someone to do it with you, not because they're helping you, just because of the motivation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was I think one of my coaches said this. He's like, yeah, like when you train with people, you kind of have like a reference too, because sometimes you could like your mind can just be like, oh no, you've done enough, man. That's a lot. But then when you look next to you and that other person's like going, 10 times faster, you're like, wait, maybe I could go. It's kind of like that whole thing where people are like, oh, that runner, beat the speed limit, beat that record, but then whatever, after a certain amount of time, a bunch of people beat that record. It's just they thought it was impossible. Then when someone does it, it's like, oh, okay, I could do it. And then they get that motivation and they you kind of rise to the occasion in a way. So yeah.
Yeah, is that called social proof? I could be wrong.
I don't know. That's interesting. I should look that up, that word too.
I feel like I'm just like, that sounds like a good buzz phrase. I'll just chuck that out. It sounds logical. It's something along those lines.
Yeah.
John, is there anything else you want to share on the topic of mental health and martial arts and that connection?
Mental health and martial arts. Yeah, for me, one thing I guess it was sort of like I said, there's so many reasons why there's a lot of motivations I noticed that motivate people. And for me, I mentioned health. I mentioned, um, I guess, just feeling that loneliness and kind of building that community, but also building some type of community, kind of being part of something, I guess. But then also it was, at one point I was stuck in my head a lot, and I was juggling working, but going to school, but moving to a new place. I was doing all these things, but I was stuck in my head. And then I felt a little bit depressed at one point. And then I was like, why do I feel like this? Like nothing is necessarily going wrong, but I just feel off, super off. And I didn't know what it was. And then I thought back and I was like, okay, because I took a break from training because I couldn't afford it, basically. So once I was able to afford it, I was like, okay, I feel like I should just start training. I remembered how happy I was when I was training. So I started training again, and I just remembered how much I loved doing the movement, that just like that embodied motion, certain motions, that specific motion, specifically striking for me. Um, and then also just getting that hit, that kind of cardio hit, and the movement, specific type of movements, the striking, the punching, the kicking, but also the cardio aspect of it just made my mind more clear. Like sometimes I realized I was just overthinking things, and I just needed to train. I just needed to like get blood pumping into my head, oxygen into my head, and doing movements that I felt kind of made me feel good. I think there's certain movements people do that make them feel good. Some people like climbing, that feeling of like pulling themselves up. I don't like doing pull-ups. I do it, but I love punching and kicking. That just makes me happy. And I used to try to find like a bigger reason, and there is, like we talked about community and a bunch of other things. But sometimes it's just like you just like doing the movement, So yeah, I would say. So I would say maybe punching and kicking will help your mental health. So yeah.
Absolutely. There's something just so satisfying for me. I don't even really like punching that much. If you ask my coach, he'll always say, like, there's no reason to wrap my hands. I don't throw many punches in fights, but man, I love to kick. Like, I love to kick shit. I love all of the kicks equally, I would say. I love to tee, I love to knee, I love to roundhouse kick, I love to question mark kick. Any of the kicks like make me so, just kicking makes me happy.
Yeah, and
Just like that.
And I try to find like a bigger reason. Like, why do I like to punch and why do I like to kick? And maybe I'll find something later. But it's just doing those movements, it's crazy. It's just some movements is just like, yes, this feels right. This makes me happy. So yeah, maybe you should just find your movements.
Yeah, I think once you've practiced a movement enough, and what enough is going to be different for different people, right? Some people will pick up martial arts and they'll be able to kick with power straight away, punch with power straight away. They're just that type of athletic person. Or maybe it's you worked at it for 10 years or however long, and it took you that long to gain some sort of a sense of mastery. But I think whenever you do a skill that you've developed and you can feel where you've improved in it, you know what it used to feel like, or you know what it could feel like if it felt bad, and you feel when it feels good, like when your hips just move in the right way. And so with minimal effort, you elicit like a lot of power, or your punch turns over at the right time and you can feel like that snap in your shoulders. And it's like the sense of pride and mastery of saying, oh yeah, I can do this thing. And I know it looks good when I do it, or it feels good when I do it, because it's some form of correct. Of course, there's lots of different ways to kick and punch, but for me, it's effective. It's not correct, it's effective.
Yeah, no, definitely. There's certain movements, and especially when you feel like you're getting better, and you're like, oh, I got it, and then it clicks in your body, and your body just is like, yeah, this is how you should do it. Yeah, definitely. And it's funny because I think maybe so for some people that have been doing it for a long time, like me, because I was actually not sure if I should like keep fighting, but now I think I will when competition is allowed because of COVID. Right now we're not allowed to compete. But at first I was like, I don't know if I will compete because I had a bunch of injuries and I didn't know if I had like the energy to keep going. So I also kind of cut down my training a little bit. But again, I started feeling off. This was like not too long ago, like a year ago. Same feeling I had like during my undergrad. And then I recognized that feeling. And then I was like, okay, let me start training more. And I kept hitting my bag a little bit more. And then I was like, that's it. I just missed doing the movements. And in my head, it's like, if I'm not fighting, I feel like I'm kind of pulled back. I think I had so much emotion in the sport because I've been doing it for so long. For me anyway, I feel like I've been doing it for so long that I feel like if I'm not fighting, I feel like, oh, like, I don't know if I should do it or something. Then I realized I'm like, no, there's a middle ground. You can still keep training. You don't have to fight. And as a fighter, I feel like I forgot that. So I just started hitting the bag and just like training because I liked it and nothing more. I didn't ask anything else. And then I slowly started building that motivation and just that hunger again. So it's interesting, just also finding like anyone could train. You don't have to fight, you can train and that's the thing, I think, for me anyway. But I think it applies to some other people that have been doing it for a while. It's like all or nothing, because that was definitely me. And it's hard for me to sometimes remind myself that you started this not because you wanted to fight, you just liked it.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be that black or white thinking.
Yeah.
How can people connect with you? I know you've put out quite a bit of content on your Instagram with videos people can do if they're in isolation and they have a bag or they have air that they want to hit. How can people connect with you, John?
So yeah, on Instagram would be the best, or YouTube. So YouTube, if they just want to get free, there's a bunch of free stuff I have there. So for both Instagram and YouTube, it's Smart Striking. On Instagram, it's Smart and then _striking. There's no like extra letters or anything. It's how you would spell it. So yeah.
Awesome. All right, we'll put the links to those in the description so that people can find you if they want to connect with you. And like I said, we'll have to get you back in 4 years or however long it takes for you to find out more information through your PhD.
Thanks a lot. And I really appreciate what you're doing. It's so awesome. The first time I listened to the podcast, I was like, wow, it was me driving to like either school sometimes or to the gym. And I have a good like 45-minute commute because I live in the country. So I've been listening to a lot of podcasts and I listened to yours and I was like, wow, this is so good. It's so cool. And I kept listening and then like it was done. There was no more episodes. And then I was like, oh, I'm waiting for your next episode and your next episode. So yeah, thank you for doing this. It's I feel like it's important definitely for the martial arts community, and you have like a different perspective, not a different perspective, but you notice things that should be talked about. So I appreciate that you're doing that.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you so much, John.
Awesome. Well, I hope you have a good morning. I was gonna say good night, but for me it's
yeah, I hope you have a good evening, or you've already had dinner. Yes,
I'm gonna have dinner right now.
You're gonna have dinner now. Go have dinner. Don't let me keep you from your wife.
Have I guess, yeah. I'll
Good
let
afternoon.
you shut it down. Yeah.
Bye everyone. Bye, John.
Take care.
Have you thought of something to be grateful for today? What was it? I'm grateful for the amazing women that train with me at the Fight Back Project. I'm grateful for Nari and the beautiful song Shape Me heard at the beginning and end of every episode. And I'm grateful for you for listening to this show and helping martial arts keep saving lives. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. If you'd like to leave me a review to help more people find the show, that's a bonus.
You need to know that nobody shapes me but me. Don't gotta tell you what my name is, I don't gotta explain it. Walk in the room, hear a boom erupting like I'm famous. I'm here shedding shells, I'm shameless. I fear nothing, no complacence. Walked too many tight ropes with no hope, so I became this poster they hold over all the heads of trauma holders. You don't need to know my history, I move boulders. Atlas shrug, cause I lifted the weight above his shoulders. No pretense of defense, move first like chess soldiers. This goes deeper than empowerment, cause I'm the one to power it. Physical meets mental, challenge me to keep devouring. If I can't change the scenery, at least I change perspectives. No longer isolated, but elevated and selective. Darkest places become beautiful spaces. This is where rage meets patience, meets power meets gracious. Meets, we're so glad you came and the feeling is contagious. When you the walking impact of intended bad intentions. When you the manifesting of collecting all they tensions. You the soul and body hold it all and still remember. But I'm a work in progress, testament to all contenders. Forgot what it was like to have control over self. Forgot what it was like to be the one in charge. Forgot in my reflection I could see all my wealth. Forgot that with my bare hands I break all these bars, barriers and obstacles. They can't cage me, they can't chronicle all my experiences and reduce them to appearances. When I was truly beaten, gave myself clearances to fall down, mess up, and get myself back up. I'm not looking for clovers cause I don't believe in luck. Damn, you were badass, I heard them say it clearly. Why thank you very much, I know now I'm not weary of what's next for me. Cause I expect to see growth like I was planted, watered, fed, and bloomed to be. The positivity and accountability, knowing they won't step if I'm the agent of my agency. I think I found my voice again, huh? I think I found my voice again, huh? I'm not sorry, you're the end where I begin. Boundaries, I know them well. Take a breath and meditate. Who is she? I know her well. Now I get to open gates. 1, 2, 1, 2. I don't need your permission. And if you get uncomfortable, then use your intuition to know that I won't stay where respect is ever missing. And everything I do, that's me making decisions. It's truly underrated, the value of self-worth. Forgot that I was rich from the moment of my birth. A penny for my thoughts, no really, you can't afford it. You cannot buy my story, rewrite it, or record it. You cannot buy my story, rewrite it, or record it, huh?